I would say that one of the ways to do that is, I don't have social media apps on my phone. I think that's just a dumb idea. I don't think anyone should say, yeah, I can take the most addictive drugs regularly and not get addicted. So I don't have them there. I do have them on my computer. I'm cognizant around limiting my time and engagement, but I've also curated it where I know what it is. I know that it's not just a benign tool. I know it is a AI-empowered agent seeking to affect my behavior. And so how do I relate to that better? So I intentionally went and I took all the major positions: extreme left, moderate right, extreme right, conspiracy, the Chinese views, the Russian views, etc. And I followed all of them, right? Followed all those news sources, followed the thought leaders in them, and made sure that I had a pretty good distribution. So Facebook's algorithm is very confused by me, right? And the other kinds of algorithms, because I wanted to see that I was not getting an echo chamber. When I use Facebook, I mostly don't state things, I put out questions. One of the reasons that I put out questions is because the people that I also friended people who have almost every view. And so many people in this environment have said, if you believe such and such, unfriend me, or I'm unfriending you. So they're doubling down on their tiny little tribalist groupthink, right? Because the other people are such dumb, terrible, bad people that I don't even want to be friends with you and see your nonsense. This is not how you influence the world effectively. And so I've intentionally friended people across the space and followed them so they also see my stuff. So the comment thread will not be a filter bubble. It'll be some extreme right and some extreme left and some various kinds of views. Someone can say, well, how dare you amplify such and such? Because if you don't understand what swaths of humanity is thinking, your ability to influence humanity is very poor. Your ability to even understand it is very poor. So then I asked the question, so as to hopefully break filter bubbles if someone reads the comment thread and is exposed to things that they aren't exposed to on their own newsfeed. To at least maybe inspire some people to look at something else. Now, unfortunately, almost everyone who comments, even if they hold different views, share such poor quality comments because they're triggered and oriented to do some kind of limbic hijacked thing that they don't even make a constructive enough argument that it's all that compelling. This is one of the other things you'll notice is that we're not compelled by stuff because we did formal epistemology and propositional logic on it. We're compelled because it feels truthy to us, or feels consequential. And so, like, if you'll notice that the stuff that feels so obviously true to you feels obviously true to people who already believe what you believe and feels obviously not true to the other people. When you put it out, they instantly see it as propaganda gibberish, right? And so that's not communicating. That's just doubling down on groupthink and tribalism. And so, but it's interesting to see, why is it that it's and good to certain people and feels just like stupid and evil to other people? Why does it feel that different way? Well, if I pay attention to the media environment that they're taking in, feels true is largely resonant with what they've taken in so far, right? Like, that's a big part of it. So one of the things that I do on an issue is, let's say I want to make sense of police violence in the US, or I want to make sense of the Beirut blast or the India-China border or whatever it is. As far as narratives go, there's not one narrative. There's usually not even two narratives. There might be 5 or 7 or 11 different kind of narrative clusters. There might be 100 versions, but they fall within general clusters. And so what I'll usually try to do is do a landscape of what the narrative clusters are first. And then I'll try to steelman each narrative. Like, what is the strongest version of arguing that thing that I've been able to see? So look for the best thinkers that are representative of those narratives. That's helpful for me to both see the signal that they got, because the collective intelligence of those people doesn't have no signal. It also helps me understand why they think what they think, which also helps me understand how to maybe communicate and relate. But that doesn't mean that I agree with all of it. It means that I'm seeking to understand it, right? So then the next thing I want to do is, after I've done that, which is a kind of interpersonal intelligence, seeking to understand the narrative, then I want to do a kind of empirical or objective intelligence and break the narrative into individual propositions. And typically, even framed in the question are assumptions and presuppositions that are actually propositions. So use propositional logic and break it into individual propositions. And I say, what evidence have they put forward to support each of these propositions? And typically it's like, I'll break a complex narrative into like 50 propositions, and there's maybe evidence for like 4 of them. And it's usually like maybe strong evidence for 2 and kind of weak for 4, and then a bunch of just emotional leaps, logical leaps. So then I'll say, what additional evidence can I get that will either verify or falsify, or at least support or decrease the likelihood for any of these? And where are there ones that I can neither verify nor falsify and should just sit as, this was just a filler someone put in, but I have no basis for certainty whatsoever? I have to be comfortable with uncertainty to be able to make sense of it, or I will try to jump to false certainties. Then I have to not only seek to verify and falsify each of those parts, because most likely there's a few true parts, a few nonsense parts, and a bunch of filler, right? And that's true across the whole narrative space. So then I also have to seek to do this across the other narratives. So this is important because most people are jumping to what is true very much not through a epistemic or logical process. Even if they think it is, if they really break it down propositionally, they'll find that they had a logical process of this seems true and this seems true, therefore, and the therefore has like 8 logical leaps in it. So basically, these are a few steps that I would encourage for people on their own to be dubious of their own certainty and outrage, to seek to understand the narrative landscape better, to seek empiricism better, to try to be able to not reject or take entire narratives, but be able to look for partial truths, to be able to try to aggregate signal across the space, to be way more comfortable with uncertainty. And that's uncomfortable in a way to say, I don't understand the world I live in. Even in the most consequential areas, I just don't understand it. At least that, I actually feel safer because I know that I don't have confirmation bias making me understand it wrongly. I at least have a chance to increase my understanding when I say I don't know, because the moment I think that I falsely know, now I'm not even going to be able to learn well, right? So these are some examples of things. And then, in addition to reading across the space, actually seek the more well-grounded and complex views as opposed to the more trending ones. I want to find the thinkers that seem most earnest and most well kind of educated and thoughtful across the space. And then I want to see where people who have deep expertise and earnestness disagree, and then I want to explore the basis of the disagreement. So just a few basic principles, and we've talked about this. You've had other whole videos on sense-making practices, but these are a few basic things. The reason why I feel compelled to say this is because we were getting into the project we're going to do, and the project we're working on by no means can do everything, and it doesn't exist up yet. So I want the first thing to be empowering people to work on their own.